Back in May 2024, Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy, and the headlines everywhere told a very simple story. They said a single shrimp deal took down a 53-year-old chain with hundreds of locations. But that is not what actually happened. While the unlimited promotion made for a great news cycle, it did not kill the brand on its own. It was just the final bad bet for a company that was already standing on a cracked foundation. So let us walk through the real math and the ownership decisions that set this disaster up, so you can see where the brand truly stands right now. To understand how a shrimp promotion turns into a bankruptcy filing, you have to look at how a casual dining chain actually makes its money. Red Lobster does not survive just by getting people through the front door. It relies on moving tables quickly, while keeping food costs inside a very tight window. They need a specific mix of orders where the high-profit items carry the ones that barely break even. A table that orders drinks, appetizers, and a mid-range entree is a win for the business. But a table that sits for 90 minutes eating nothing but the cheapest high-volume item is a massive problem. That gap between good traffic and bad traffic is where this whole story starts. Promotions are usually designed to work like a controlled magnet for customers. You offer a deal to get people in the seats, and the hope is that they will buy enough sides and extras to make the discount pay for itself. The promo drives the traffic, while the add-ons drive the profit margin. And that theory works perfectly as long as the deal has a floor. When you put a cap on how much a guest can actually consume, the math stays manageable. Endless Shrimp removed that floor entirely. But before that promo ever launched, the company was already dealing with pressures that never made it into the commercials. Everything changed in 2014 when Darden Restaurants sold the chain to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital. This ownership shift matters because private equity usually has a very specific set of priorities. Their goal isn't always to build a brand that lasts for 20 years. It's to extract value quickly and hit financial targets. Under this new structure, Red Lobster sold off a huge portion of the real estate it had owned outright for decades. They sold the land to a real estate investment trust and then leased the buildings back, which brought in a large amount of cash up front, but turned a fixed asset into a permanent monthly bill. At the same time, the cost of doing business started climbing. Seafood supply chains are notoriously expensive and volatile, and shrimp prices move constantly based on global demand and fuel costs. Labor costs were also rising across the entire industry after 2020, which put the company in a very tight spot. Food and labor are the two biggest expenses for any full-service restaurant, and when they both go up at once, you either have to raise prices or find a way to get a lot more people into the dining room. Red Lobster was struggling on both of those fronts, and that kind of pressure usually pushes management toward the same desperate solution. They decided to run massive discounts to fill the seats, but chasing traffic with discounts trains your customers to wait for a deal. People stop wanting to pay full price on a Tuesday when they know a bigger sale is coming next month. Over time, that cycle eats away at the profit margins until the business becomes dependent on the discount. The deal stops being a tool to grow the business and starts being a crutch to keep it alive, which is exactly where the company was sitting when they decided to make endless shrimp a permanent menu item. Endless shrimp was not a new idea for the chain. Red Lobster had been running it as a limited time promotion as far back as 2004, and for a long time, it did exactly what a good deal is supposed to do. It brought people through the doors during a specific window, got people talking, and then it disappeared before it could do any real damage to the bank account. The most important part of that whole strategy was the word limited. Guests knew the deal would not last forever, so they came in, ate their fill, and then the promotion ended before the food costs spiraled out of control. In 2023, the leadership at Red Lobster decided to make it a permanent part of the menu. That one choice changed the entire risk level of the offer and set the stage for a financial disaster. The math is pretty straightforward when you lay it out. When a guest sits down and orders endless shrimp at a set price, the restaurant collects a fixed amount of money, no matter how many plates come out of the kitchen. The revenue for that table is capped the second the order is placed, but the cost side of that equation never stops. Moving. Every extra shrimp skewer, every refill of the scampi, and every portion of fried shrimp represents a real cost hitting the kitchen. The more a guest eats, the wider the gap becomes between what they paid and what it actually costs the restaurant to serve them. A normal dinner in casual dining targets a food cost of around 30% of the menu price. When you serve one plate and the guest leaves, you hit that target or get pretty close. But when you serve 4 or 5 plates at that same price, the food cost for that table climbs past 50 or 60%, which is a number that would make any kitchen manager lose sleep. Multiply that across hundreds of guests on a busy Saturday night, and you are looking at a massive loss on the promotion before you even start counting labor and electricity. Unlimited deals also slow everything down inside the dining room. A table ordering a standard meal usually finishes and leaves in about 45 to 55 minutes, but a group working through multiple rounds of shrimp is going to stay much longer, sometimes well over an hour. That means the restaurant is serving fewer total families per shift. A busy room that clears and refills twice is always better than a full room that only turns over once, and Red Lobster was getting the crowds without the turnover they needed. What the company failed to realize was how much guest behavior would shift once the deal became permanent. A short-term offer attracts a mix of people, including some who just want a normal meal and others who want to see how much they can eat. When the offer never goes away, it starts attracting that second group specifically. People who wanted to get the most value for their dollar knew they could come in and eat as much as they wanted for one flat fee. That's just rational shopping behavior, but it meant the cost estimates the company used were completely wrong once the dining room filled up with people who were there to maximize every dollar they spent. By the end of one quarter in 2023, Red Lobster reportedly lost about $11 million on endless shrimp alone. In a restaurant budget, that's the kind of number that forces very difficult conversations about how much cash is left and how many bad months the company can survive before it runs out of options. The timing made everything worse. A company with plenty of money in the bank and a solid cost structure can usually survive a bad promotion by pulling it back and trying something else. That's what a financial cushion is for. But Red Lobster didn't have any room for error in 2023. Their rent payments were already eating through cash every month. Food prices were still elevated from the supply chain disruptions of 2020, and their customers had been trained for years to wait for a discount before they'd even consider walking through the door. When endless shrimp went permanent and the losses started piling up, there wasn't enough profit anywhere else to cover the hole. To understand why a single bad quarter could push a massive chain toward a bankruptcy lawyer, you've got to look at a financial move that happened nearly 10 years before the shrimp losses ever started. Back in 2014, when Golden Gate Capital bought Red Lobster from Darden, the chain actually owned a huge number of its restaurant buildings outright. That real estate was a massive asset on the balance sheet, something of real value that could be used as collateral for loans or sold in an emergency. Within a year of the takeover, a huge portion of those properties were sold to American Realty Capital Properties, in what is known as a sale-leaseback deal. Red Lobster walked away with about $1.5 billion from that transaction, but it came with a very high price tag for the future. A sale-leaseback is straightforward at its core. You sell the building you own, you keep running your business inside it, and then you pay rent to the new owner every single month. When you own your building, your costs are mostly fixed and predictable because you are just dealing with taxes and maintenance. When you are leasing that same building, you owe rent whether your dining room is packed or completely empty. Most of these lease agreements also include price increases that push the rent higher every few years, on a schedule of their own, regardless of how many lobster tails you are actually selling. For Red Lobster, this meant that hundreds of locations were suddenly carrying a rent bill that did not even exist before 2014. A restaurant that used to turn a solid profit might only break even, or start losing money. Once you added that new lease payment into the mix, the profit that used to stay with the brand was now going to a landlord every month, and across the entire country that created a massive drain on cash that quietly influenced every single decision the company made from that point forward. The chain went through several ownership changes over the years, including a period when Thai Union, one of the world's largest seafood suppliers, held a significant stake in the company. Every time the keys changed hands, the new owners brought their own priorities. Court filings from the bankruptcy process show a consistent pattern of decisions focused on generating cash quickly rather than restoring the long-term health of the brand. By the time 2023 rolled around, Red Lobster was trapped. It faced expensive leases on buildings it had once owned free and clear, rising costs on every side of the business, and customers so conditioned by discounts that they would not pay full price. And there was no financial cushion to absorb a single bad quarter. The company did not have many paths to bring in more revenue without leaning even harder on the same discount strategies that were already killing the margins. That is the ultimate trap. When fixed costs are high and sales are weak, the first instinct is to run a big promotion to fill the seats. But filling those seats with guests who are only there for a deep discount does not fix the underlying problem of high rent and rising costs. It merely creates a lot of activity, making the company look busy for a few more months while the real problems get worse. Truly fixing things would require customers paying full price and time to renegotiate with landlords. Time is the one thing you do not have when the bills are already due. When Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in May of 2024, most people assumed the doors were locking for good. Chapter 11 is not a death sentence for a business. It is a company telling a federal court that it cannot pay its bills right now, and it needs a chance to reorganize while keeping the lights on. The restaurants stay open, the staff keeps working, and a judge oversees every major financial decision the company makes going forward. The first steps followed a familiar path. Roughly 100 locations were closed to focus resources on the stores that actually made financial sense. The company went back to landlords and tried to negotiate lower rent, since most property owners would rather collect a smaller check than sit on a giant empty building. A group called Fortress Investment Group eventually stepped up as the buyer and took over the brand once it cleared the bankruptcy process, leaving the old debt behind and running a much leaner version of the original chain. But here is what restructuring can't fix on its own. A judge can wipe away debt, but they can't make people want to come back. They can't repair a reputation that has been fading for years, or convince customers to pay full price after a decade of discounts. The new ownership has to give people a real reason to walk through those doors, and that means fixing the menu, the pricing, and the overall experience from the ground up. At the end of the day, A single shrimp promotion did not sink this company by itself. It was the final straw for a business that had spent years piling up costs it could never hope to cover. Starting with a real estate deal that looked smart in 2014 and revealed its true price tag almost a decade later. Now the question is whether the new owners will actually break the cycle of constant discounting or just run the same old playbook with a cleaner balance sheet. If you worked at one of these locations or watched a store close down in your town, please leave a comment and share what you saw from the inside. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns like this one.